still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
The NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute. We have not.
$3.7 million to a nonprofit called Echo Health Alliance, which then turned around and sent $600,000 from that grant to the Wuhan lab. I hope you're following that. Take your time, play this back. Dr. Fauci's favorite sparring partner joins us now, Senator Rand Paul.
And does not infect humans. They juice it up. They make it a super virus so it can infect humans. Now, ostensibly, this is done to study the virus, but there's a danger if that virus leaks that it could kill a lot of people. So when I ask him about this research, I can't imagine he's on national television saying that he didn't do this when the peer-reviewed journal has a byline that says the author, this Batwoman, this scientist from the Wuhan Institute, that she acknowledges that the money came from Dr. Fauci. And a lot of people arguing that there are several different unusual aspects to the virus that make it look like it came from a lab and not from nature. They haven't found an intermediate host. They haven't found anything between the bat and the human. Both SARS and MERS went to...
Again, I don't understand the lack of curiosity from Dr. Fauci. This is his business. Why is that not his obsession rather than being on 25 talk shows a day?
If you want to be even more confounded by this, they wanted to
sign a statement saying not to deprive them of their money. What's the desperation to get Western money into an area where we know the virus came from some way, somehow?
But here's the other interesting thing. If Fauci's
to him.
And last year, I honestly put a man above Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I believed in man. I believed what was being told to me. He was the president of...
Between these, that guy knows now that believing the lie got him in trouble. So he wants to talk about it. For the politicians in Trump's pocket, they believe the opposite.
To try to erase Donald Trump from the Republican Party is insane. And the people who try to erase him are going to wind up getting erased.
He is exactly right. Lindsey Graham, all they are now. Party of Trump, P-O-T, a pot filled with Trump tripe. I say this not out of some sense of a desire for more confrontation. We have plenty. It will be remembered, and not for the grandiosity of the moment, but for how low people were willing to go, and for what. It is not about the truth. It never has been. Tomorrow, Trump's own we're about here. When? Tell me. Because we know where you want to go now. And I have to say you, because this is your party, and until you stand up and say, no, it isn't, this is where you are, this is who you are. You are going back of your party introducing more than 360 bills to suppress the vote, particularly in minority communities. Don't smile so fast, Red Hat Brigade, that is struggling to make it work. Yes, poor black folks are going to get hit by this, just like Jim Crow. They weren't explicitly about color, they were color neutral. But class catches you just the same. And you guys, white and black, are going to be on long lines. Long lines means doing what they do most and best. Lie. Like Trump's main minion did today. Listen to this.
Those Jim Crow laws were drafted by Democrats. Legislation, to use a phrase that has been popularized on the media recently, is Jim Crow 2.0.
This man is proof that politics makes you stupid. This is a debate champion. Ivy League remedy is sitting in the House and the Senate, the For the People Act. It is the only way to change redistricting. Why do you think you have 50 senators on the right side of the aisle that represent less than 25% of this country? Redistricting. It's also why they are so extreme, because they're playing to a minority. And as long as they rig the game to have the districts the way they are, they can do that. And the only thing that would stop them is some idea of pride or higher purpose or principle. Hope they do. People need to see where you are on this law and why. This is not both sides. Oh yes, nobody's got a stranglehold on lowering our expectations and feeding our history. Liz Cheney tonight will be remembered for being the one person, a woman, to stand up and say to a group of largely men, you are cowards who have forgotten why we are here. The only question is, what's going to happen next?
Throughout the Southeast, consumers are really feeling the ripple effects of the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack.
Actually didn't even know about it till I pulled up and noticed that there was no gas here.
Well, the fact that we can be hacked.
I want you to listen to what General Jack Keane told Maria this morning and then get your response. Take a listen.
The people who are involved in the criminality, by and large, are all the U.S. or all the Russian hackers. What Putin permits them
between this attack and those people, or even to those who, as General Keane described, simply, quote, moonlighting, end of quote, on behalf of Russia.
Why do you think this is happening now, Secretary? That, again, very much of what this administration has done.
Most to Americans, right, denying us the ability to move our cars around the country and drive, go to gas pump and not have gasoline there. They know that impacts us. We need strong leadership. It's why the things that we did for 4 years deterred lots of bad actions by lots of bad actors all across.
Question that I had a little bit ago.
Yeah, look, there are lots of ways that one can respond. There are diplomatic means. There are lots of tools in the American arsenal to protect us from precisely this kind of attack, including securing those very
ways.
Forces and Palestinian militants have stepped up their attacks in the worst fighting seen in years. The UN now warning of the risk of full-scale war. And 5 people have been killed there. And Israel says Hamas has fired more than 1,000 rockets since Monday, killing at least 5 Israelis. The UN Security Council is set to hold an urgent meeting on Wednesday over the unrest.
Rooftops, terrified residents watch the missiles descend on their city. Israel's famed Iron Dome defense system overwhelmed by the sheer number of rockets launched by Hamas from Gaza. Easter pledged revenge. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have paid, and I tell you, they will pay a very heavy price for their aggression. I say here tonight, their blood. Israeli airstrikes have been pounding Gaza. Here, a building housing Hamas officials is felled by Israeli bombs. Neither side is willing to back down. If Israel wants to escalate, we're ready for it. And if it wants to stop, we're also ready. If they want to remove their hand over Jerusalem, we're ready. Despite Israel's sophisticated defenses, Hamas is a nuisance. They've taken lives and destroyed property. But Israeli airstrikes have extracted a much heavier toll on Gaza's population. A final goodbye as these relatives bury their loved ones. This has taken the lead in calling for a peaceful resolution to the crisis.
We are deeply concerned about the escalation between Israel and those launching rockets from Gaza, and we call for restraint and for calm. Israel has the right to...
Let's cross straight over to our Jerusalem correspondent, Tanya Kramer. Tanya, tell us more about those Israeli airstrikes in Gaza and the rocket attacks on Israel. What's been happening there?
Well, as we overnight and especially also in the early morning hours on Gaza, we understand that 2 residential high-rise buildings in Gaza were targeted, but also many institutional buildings like police stations in Gaza. At the same time, we've seen since last night also a major escalation by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad by launching rockets towards the center of Israel, including Tel Aviv. A day and a half of these hostilities, but of course those numbers are changing by the minute.
Now, Tanya, there's also growing tension between Arab Israelis and Jews on the ground in Israel. How serious is that?
That's right. We've seen already a lot of protests here in the past weeks in mixed cities, or especially towns with an Arab Israeli or Arab Palestinian communities over the issues related to East Jerusalem. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has now declared the city in a state of emergency and has ordered reinforcements in the city to restore calm, as he said.
Okay, well, with
the moment, it's not clear whether this is happening and what kind of political maneuvering, what space is there to end those hostilities at that particular point now in time.
Tanya, thank you. That was
said he had spoken to Mr. Netanyahu and said he hoped the violence would end sooner rather than later. At least 65 Palestinians, including 15 children, and 6 Israelis are reported to have been killed since Monday. In the past few days, Jerusalem. It all came to a head on Friday at Al-Aqsa Mosque. The site where it stands is highly sensitive, sacred for both Muslims and Jews. Israeli police used CS gas and stun grenades at the mosque, and Palestinian youths threw rocks at them. Police correspondent Tom Bateman.
People who work to this feel it's already here. Palestinians in Gaza face the fiercest Israeli bombardment since the last all-out conflict. Israel says it's officials. In Gaza, a territory under blockade, grief quickly turns to anger. Dozens have died here since the violence erupted on Monday, and they're still counting their dead. Rocket fire.
Okay, that's an interception. Let's get it in. Jimmy. As we've heard airstrikes pound the Gaza Strip just a couple of miles away throughout the course of this morning into the afternoon. More.
And his son Maor ran for safety, but their neighbour, an 89-year-old woman, didn't make it. She's seriously injured. Her carer died in the strike. There are growing international calls for restraint, but for now, it seems that no one here is listening.
In retaliation, a descent into much further violence seems inevitable.
More rockets are shot down in Israel's skies. Or how fear and chaos is spreading. Violence between Jews and Arabs inside Israel is spiralling. Here, Jewish extremists attack an ambulance and then check a car to see if... Along the coast, a popular Arab restaurant comes under attack. In another mixed town, a Jewish man is beaten by Arab Israelis. A synagogue has also been torn. A wave of anger that started in Jerusalem has spilled out to the occupied territories and into Israel itself. The country's engulfed in multiple flashpoints.
And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he is now considering sending in army troops to some of those areas experiencing those kinds of confrontations. As to the wider military conflict, as you were saying, Sophie, the US says that his expectation and hope is it should end sooner rather than later, while also saying that he believes Israel has the right to defend itself. But with more airstrikes pounding the Gaza Strip in the last couple of hours and...
Talk to Rushdie Abu Alof, who's in Gaza City. And what's the situation there tonight?
The sound of bombs and airstrikes are continue shortly after midnight here in Gaza. It hit hundreds of targets, and Hamas, the militancy group, fired hundreds of rockets. This situation is leaving this place in a very grim sort of picture. People are suffering, also casualties in the place, and the latest Health Ministry figure is talking about more than 60 people killed, half of them are civilians.
Rushdie Abu Alof, thank you very much. Well, it's the worst violence in the region.
Conflict between Israelis and Palestinians hasn't made headlines in recent years, but it's been a tinderbox waiting to explode. The spark, Jerusalem, a city of sacred sites and simmering tensions, the heart of the conflict. And now with depressing for peace and Palestinians infuriated by restrictions on them gathering at the entrance to the old city at sunset. And then, on the last weekend of Ramadan, came clashes at Al-Aqsa Mosque, where Israeli security forces impound. Hamas, which rules the Gaza Strip, is now portraying itself as the protector of Jerusalem, the defender of Muslim worshippers. It's called its barrages of rocket fire Operation Sword of Jerusalem. Two sides can actually agree on. It has both religious and national significance. The Israelis see it as their eternal undivided capital, while for the Palestinians, they want it, or at least the eastern part of it, as the capital of their future state. But there's gone way beyond Jerusalem. It's revived memories of the war in Gaza in 2014, which left more than 2,000 Palestinians and dozens of Israelis dead. That's the last time there was an explosion of violence on this scale forward and must be revived. Boris Johnson and the Americans urged Israelis and Palestinians to step back from the brink.
We believe Palestinians and Israelis equally deserve to live with safety and security.
The deadly fighting follows weeks of near-nightly protests over forced evictions in East Jerusalem.
Even from my apartment in Tel Aviv, where the rocket fire barely ever gets to, we managed to get about just 1 hour's sleep. Rounds of rocket fire, more than 150 rockets shot over from the Gaza Strip. You can see them there on your screen, into a different reality today. The reality of shocking violence, which is spreading from the south all the way to have Arab and Jewish residents. We are seeing terrible incidents coming from both sides. We're seeing far-right mash as authorities here are calling for calm. And as you mentioned, the UN's Guterres is a 4-year-old boy. This little boy was actually sheltering inside his rocket shelter there in southern Israel. I've been in one before, but it was literally 1 or 2 rockets coming over. Last night, I just come off air. We heard our studios. If you look that way, that is Tel Aviv. We are in Jaffa, just through there.
At the employ, 3 days later, the elderly man has died. And Fox 13's Catherine Hawley is live in town.
On the concrete floor, dying from his injuries just days later. Everything started last Tuesday around 1:30.
Told the victim to say it one more time.
That employee was 27-year-old Corey Pajoles. According, Pajoles punched him once in the face.
The suspect ended up punching the victim so hard that he fell back, hit his head.
And Pajoles is set to be in court for that new charge this Thursday. Kelly.
All right, Catherine Hawley.
Como se le conoce a la defensa antimisiles de Israel. Uno de los cohetes logra su objetivo, impacta contra un autobús en Holon, al sur de Tel Aviv. Otro cohete más hace blanco en el importante. Los ataques de ambas partes no cesan. Hamas ha lanzado unos 250 cohetes hacia Israel en las últimas 24 horas. El ejército israelí ha lanzado operaciones contra más de 140 operativos palestinos.
La guerra, esta guerra que empieza a escalar entre Israel y los palestinos. Y en medio de este conflicto que escala su nivel, la Casa Blanca refrendó su apoyo total a Israel. Dice Washington que Israel está en su derecho de defenderse de Hamas. Solo la Casa Blanca de Joe Biden se pronunció a favor de Israel en este conflicto. También el expresidente Donald Trump. Donald Trump regresó con una declaración en la que acusa al gobierno de Biden de volver al mundo mucho más violento. Dice que
por el barrio musulmán, al final se desvió por parte del gobierno israelí, se desvió esta manifestación y obviamente, y además no se les permite, ¿no?, a los musulmanes, en este caso a los palestinos, ir a la mezquita del Aqsa, rezar ahí. Y la mezquita del Aqsa siempre ha sido un problema. Claro. Fue la segunda intifada en el año 2000, sí, cuando Ariel Sharon visitó la mezquita del Aqsa. También ahí tenemos una escalada de violencia tremenda que además va a durar de 2000 a 2005, que es un entramado geopolítico que se genera alrededor del conflicto Israel-Palestina. Claro. Y además estuvo motivado, lo decías hace un momento, desde la política que tuvo el presidente Trump.
Trump.
Desde los